You're at the checkout line. You grab a bag of cookies. You tear it open before you've even paid. You eat one, then another. You tell yourself you'll stop after this one. You don't stop. By the time you're in the car, the bag is half empty. You feel a little sick, a little annoyed at yourself. You've done this before. You'll probably do it again next week. You already know the lecture. Eat less sugar. Have more willpower. Try harder next time. Forget the lecture for a second. Here's the thing. That's not weakness. That's not a lack of willpower. That's a machine. A very old machine. Built 35,000 years ago. Firing exactly the way it was designed to fire. Let's meet the guy it was built for. Europe. 35,000 years ago. Ice Age. A Cro-Magnon hunter has been tracking a herd of reindeer for 3 days through fresh snow. He nearly died once already. Fell through river ice. Almost didn't make it out. He's not just hungry, he's past hungry. His body has started eating his own muscle for fuel. 15 people are waiting for him back at camp. If he comes back empty-handed, nobody eats tonight. Not one of them. Now take him. Pull him straight out of that world. Set him down in front of a supermarket. Not the inside yet, just the outside. The parking lot. Rows of metal boxes on wheels, silent, unmoving, no one guarding a single one of them. Already, something is wrong. In his world, that many valuable objects sitting unattended means one thing: a trap, or the territory of something powerful enough not to need to guard it. Then the glass doors slide open on their own. No wind, no hand, nothing pushing them. He steps inside. Minute 1 is light. Same light, no matter the hour. No shadows, no sun climbing or falling. In his world, light with no sun means exactly 2 things: fire or lightning. Neither one explains this. A small crack in his understanding of the world. Not panic, not yet. Minute 2 is a rule that just broke. No fire in the room, no wind cutting through it. Still warm. In his world, warmth is something you earn. You feed it, you guard it. Here it's just free. Then he passes the refrigerated aisle, and it gets worse. Cold, pouring out of a box with no winter attached to it. Cold that turns on and off by itself. Fire that isn't fire, winter that isn't winter. 2 impossible things, 30 seconds apart. And there are no windows anywhere, no sky to check, no way to tell how much time has passed since he walked in. For a mind that has tracked the sun its entire life, that's not a small detail. That's losing one of his senses entirely without warning. Minute 3 is sound with no source. Music, coming from nowhere, playing for no one in particular. A scanner at the register. Beep, beep, beep. Same pitch. Same gap. Every single time. Nothing alive makes a sound that exact. Nothing alive repeats itself with 0 variation. His brain doesn't have a category for this yet. It files it under not alive, or worse, under alive and wrong. Minute 4. The room fills up. His group back home is 15 people. He knows every one of their faces, their footsteps, the smell of smoke on their clothes. Here, there are 60 strangers in one room, and none of them are looking at each other. In his world, that many unfamiliar faces means one of 2 things: a hostile group, or a disaster that pushed several bands together at once. Neither one explains calm. 60 relaxed strangers in one room is not a peaceful sight to him. It's a red flag his instincts can't decode. There's a smell in the air too. Warm bread. Sugar. Something baking somewhere close, pumped in through vents near the entrance, on purpose. In his world, smell tells you what's alive, what's rotting, what's burning, what's bleeding. This smell tells him nothing except that it's pleasant. No source he can find. No fire anywhere nearby. A smell with no story attached to it at all. And above their heads, small black domes on the ceiling, watching everything, watching everyone, without blinking, without ever looking away. He doesn't know what they are, but every instinct he has tells him they're eyes, and eyes that never blink usually belong to something you don't want to meet. Minute 5. The food starts. Row after row of it. Honey, he's tasted it maybe 5 times in his entire life, each time earning it with a dozen stings. Here, there are 20 jars of it, sitting in a row, unguarded. Nobody standing over it with a spear. In his world, that much food with no one defending it means only one thing. It belongs to something bigger than a human. Something dangerous. Something close by. He hasn't even reached the bread aisle, and he already believes he's trespassing. Researchers who study hunter-gatherer diets estimate that a typical forager's caloric intake for an entire month could sit on 2 or 3 shelves in front of him right now. Not the whole store. 2 shelves. Then he turns down one more aisle, and it's worse. Not different food. The same food. Over and over. 40 variations of the same cereal. 30 versions of the same bottled water. Row after identical row. In his world, no 2 things are ever truly the same. Every stone tool has its own chips. Every animal hide has its own scars. Sameness at this scale doesn't read as order to him. It reads as something unnatural repeating itself, again and again for no reason he can name. Minute 6 is the trap, and it's the one his brain can't fight. Someone hands him a cookie, sugar, fat, salt, all three at once, in a concentration that does not exist anywhere in nature. Not in fruit, not in meat, not in anything he's ever put in his mouth. Scientists have a word for this: supernormal stimuli. A signal built so intense it overrides the brain's own alarms. The same trick that makes a bird sit on a giant fake egg instead of her own. His reward system evolved for a world where sugar meant one ripe fruit a season, where salt was worth going to war over. This cookie is a key, cut perfectly, for a lock that took 100,000 generations to build. He has no defense against it, none. And here's the part food companies actually know, whether he does or not. The bright colors on the packaging, the bakery smell pumped through vents near the entrance, the sweet aisle placed right next to the checkout line where people are tired, distracted, and least able to say no. None of that is accidental. It's engineered around exactly the reward circuit sitting in his skull. Whole teams of people spend entire careers figuring out precisely how much crunch, how much sweetness, how much salt makes a snack food nearly impossible to put down. There's even a term for it in the food industry: the bliss point, the exact ratio of sugar, fat, and salt that maximizes craving without triggering the brain's built-in shut-off switch. He's never met a single one of these people, and he still doesn't stand a chance. Minute 7. He notices the shelves themselves. Plastic, glass, painted metal, perfectly smooth. No tool marks, no grain, no stitching. In his world, every object carries a fingerprint, the shape of a hand, the scar of a flint strike, a seam sewn from sinew. Here, 100 bottles in a row are identical down to the label. Not one of them shows a single trace of who made it. That's not craftsmanship to him. That's something else entirely. Something that either grew this way or was made by something not human at all. Minute 8, the checkout. Strangers handing over food in exchange for a small piece of plastic. No debt owed, no memory kept, no relationship at all. In his world, every trade is remembered. Every exchange creates a bond that lasts. Here, it's forgotten the second the doors close behind them. Of everything in this building, that might be the strangest thing of all. No spear changed hands. No promise was made. No one will remember this exchange by tomorrow. And yet the whole system runs smoothly, thousands of times a day, on nothing but trust in something none of them can see. One more thing happens before he reaches the door. A machine speaks to him, not a person. A flat, calm voice, coming from a screen, telling him exactly what to do next. Scan the item, place it in the bag. Unexpected item in the bagging area. Nobody built that voice a face. Nobody built it a body. It just talks. And somehow, everyone around him obeys it without question. Then, as he walks toward the exit, a small gate beeps at him. Loud, sudden, aimed directly at him. For half a second, his whole body braces for a fight or a run. Nobody else even looks up. A worker glances over, shrugs, waves him through. False alarm happens all the time. In his world, an alarm that means nothing would be unthinkable. Every sound has a reason. Here, apparently some of them don't. And then, if he can hold the panic back long enough to just stand there and take it in, something shifts, because this room, right now, is the safest room a human being has ever stood in. No predators, no frostbite, no hunger he can't solve in the next 60 seconds. Researchers studying life expectancy in this period found something brutal. Even an adult who made it past childhood had real odds of dying from infection, injury, or starvation, long before old age ever became a problem. A twisted ankle out on the ice could be a death sentence. An infected cut could be a death sentence. A bad season of hunting could kill an entire group, not just one person. None of that exists in here, not for the next hour anyway. This building is the finish line, the end point of everything his species ever fought and bled for 100,000 years. Every tool his ancestors sharpened by firelight. Every hide they sewed shut against the wind. Every winter they barely survived. All of it pointed at exactly this: a room where nobody starves, nobody freezes, and nothing is hunting you back. He just doesn't know it yet. Here's the part that actually matters. That reward system in his head, it's the exact same one in yours, right now. In line, reaching for the bag. Decision fatigue is real. It's been studied and measured directly. The more choices you face in a row, the worse each one gets, and the more anxious you feel, even in a completely safe environment. A single supermarket carries around 40,000 products. Your brain was never built to sort through that many decisions before lunch. That's why the fruit is near the entrance, when your willpower is still fresh. That's why the candy is near the register, when it's already worn thin. Nobody designed the aisles for a Cro-Magnon. They designed them for exactly the brain he handed down to you. And that pull toward sugar and fat and salt, not a malfunction. A perfectly functioning ancient system, dropped into an environment it was never designed for. Researchers call it evolutionary mismatch. The food changed faster than the brain ever could. Genetically, you are almost identical to him. The only thing that changed is what's on the shelf. His version of that circuit fired once every few months, and it kept him alive. Yours fires multiple times a day, and now it's working against you. Obesity, binge eating, the low hum of guilt after a grocery run, none of that comes from a broken brain. brain. It comes from a perfectly working ancient brain, standing in an environment built for a species that no longer exists. He would never know that his descendants, standing in that same aisle, wired with that same prehistoric machine, would walk out with a bag of cookies they already regret before they've even started the car. Same signal, same brain. Just aimed at a target that stopped needing saving a long, long time ago. He spent his entire life solving one problem: finding enough food to survive the next month. You solve that problem in about 4 minutes, on your way to the checkout, without even noticing you did it. The war he nearly died fighting has been over for a long time. Nobody bothered to tell his brain. It's still standing guard, watching an empty battlefield, ready for a threat that packed up and left generations ago. He walked in starving, half convinced he'd wandered into someone else's territory. He'd walk out, if he ever got the chance, as one of the safest, best-fed humans who had ever lived, completely unaware that the exact same fear response, dialed down but never switched off, is still sitting behind your eyes every single time you walk through those same doors. He nearly died for a handful of honey. You just walk past 20 jars of it without even slowing down. That's not a small difference. That's the entire story of your species, compressed into one aisle.